Yesterday, Jules Gounon and Fabian Schiller became the first driver pairing to win 3 races in the 2022 ADAC GT Masters season. It was looking very good indeed today as well. Jules Gounon putting in an incredible lap in qualifying this morning, some half a second quicker than anybody else on the grid. But 3.5 hours later, an awful lot can happen, and indeed has happened, because Jules Gounon and Fabian Schiller have been disqualified from qualifying. The Drago Racing Team ZVO Mercedes AMG did not have enough fuel in it, and that car there that was due to start from pole position has been relegated to the very back with no time recorded. It has big implications for the championship as we look at Jules Gounon, who really will need to be using all of his mental power. His body language says it all as he tries to pull himself back together and work hard from the very back of the pack. We are at the Sachsenring. It's a circuit that is very difficult to overtake on. So coming from 19th on the grid is going to be a massive challenge for Jules Gounon. And he's also going to be carrying a weight penalty, 20 kilograms, because he won the race yesterday. And there's also 10 kilograms going to be applied to the car that has been driven by Daniel Juncadella and Raffaele Marciello. It will be Daniel Juncadella who starts in that car. He is down in 6th place after qualifying. He leads the championship. Well, at least Raffaele Marciello does. And he is carrying that grid weight penalty, a success penalty for his 2nd place yesterday. Dennis Marshall and Kim Louis Schramm, who now are promoted to the front row of the grid, are also carrying a weight penalty. That'll be 5 kilograms as a result of finishing in 3rd place yesterday. The car that is promoted, though, to pole position is the Monteplas by Land Motorsport Audi that is driven by Tim Zimmerman and Christopher Mies. And they have claimed that pole position as a result of the disqualification for Jules Gounon and Fabian Schiller. We see there Dries Vanthoor. Vanthoor lies 3rd on the grid in the Monteplas by Land Motorsport Audi. It's great to have Dries back on the grid for the 2nd time this year. He is sharing driving duties with Yusufa Vega. He's sitting in for Ricardo Feller, who is on duty in other places this weekend. But it's always good to have Dries Vanthoor on the grid. Something of a fixture and fitting here in the ADAC GT Masters. The number 71 car lines up 4th on the grid, and that was qualified by Marco Mappelli. And this circuit really seems to shine for Marco Mappelli. Always does well here. He did last year, and he is again this year, just shining. Jan Marszałkowski, a great qualifying session for him. No, that's not Jan Marszałkowski, but he has qualified very well indeed. Is that him? Oh, it's hard to recognize from the top of the head. Oh, there he is. Hello, Jan. Give us a wave. He has had a great qualifying session, and he lines up next on the grid. And he is sharing with Marvin Dietz, so that is just counting down 5th place on the grid for Jan Marszałkowski. Alongside him is the championship leader. Well, it will be. Raffaele Marciello will take over the driving duties of that car in the 2nd half of the race. It's Daniel Juncadella who qualified it this morning. It's Daniel Juncadella who is going to need to do all the hard work to start off with and try and move that car a little bit further up the grid. Matthias Drudi in the car collection by Motorsport Audi lines up 7th on the grid. And he is a driver who had a good day yesterday, 10th place, so not bad at all. Of course, sharing with Thierry Vermeulen in the Verstappen.com Audi. So the cars are getting ready here in the sunshine. Weather conditions are a lot better than we anticipated. It was forecast to be raining this afternoon. It was also forecast to be raining in qualifying this morning, but that hasn't happened. In fact, we have blue skies from corner to corner, and the track temperature is 17.3 degrees centigrade and is getting hotter by the moment. And that brings us on to the next headline, and that is tyres, tyre degradation. All the way through yesterday, that's all we were talking about, were tyres. What is going on with the tyres? This track has always been pretty heavy. on tyre wear and tyre degradation. But yesterday we saw cars really suffering, but also a number of cars suffering with punctures as a result as well. So tyres are a real issue here at the Sachsenring, a circuit where the cars run in an anti-clockwise direction. Alongside me, Adam Weller. Well, we thought it was going to be a Jules Gounon walk-away, didn't we, today? But suddenly it's all turned on its head.
He came into this weekend thinking, you know what, I can get myself a couple of wins and then maybe, just maybe, I'll be back in the title hunt. That has not come to pass, though. He had the win yesterday. We thought he'd put himself in prime position, but now, post-qualifying, disqualification. And that means he will start at the back of the grid, as we have alluded to. So that is a huge drama and a huge development. That man, Marcus Winkelhock, starting from 11th place on the grid. That's a fairly good starting position for him. We have 3 Audis towards the sharp end of the grid for this one. He is also in one of the Audi R8 LMS GT3s, the winningest cars in the history of ADAC GT Masters here at the Sachsenring. So perhaps Winkelhock can work his way into the top 10. Jesse Krohn in the M4 GT3 for Schubert Motorsport. Combine and conquer is the motto for Krohn and Green this weekend. They're usually in opposing Schubert BMWs. This weekend they come together under the banner of the number 10 car.
Yes, they do indeed, because Niklas Kruten and Nicky Katzberg are on duty in other places. So we have combined the two teams, at least they have. And it is Ben Green and Jesse Krohn, and quite a formidable combination, if I might say so, the two of them together. There, you just saw briefly another of the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis. That was the Arthur Rouget Franck Pereira car. And there is Ian Chen Guven. Now Guven lines up a long way back on the grid. He's got a lot of work to do from there, because Ian Chen Guven, who is second in the points championship, some 22 points off the lead, and really needs to get a weave on today, because a lot of work to do for both him and Christian Engelhardt, his co-driver. There is Frankie Bird, who lines up 15th on the grid in the other of the yellow Mambas. And he is having a great season, actually, along with co-driver Elias Seppänen. The young pairing have proven to be very good with each other. They complement each other well, and they have a great team behind them. I was just looking back, I was talking about Ian Chen Guven and Christian Engelhardt. They're down on row 7. That's 14th on the grid. Those are the driver combination who are second in the championship. And, of course, with Jules Gounon, Fabian Schiller starting last. They're the driver combination who are third in the championship. And then Albert Costa-Balboa and Jack Aitken, they start 9th on the grid. Suddenly, Raffaele Marciello, despite the not-so-great qualifying session from Daniel Juncadella, lining up 6th, they are still at the front of that group of cars.
Yeah, they are indeed. Yeah, at the very back of the entire group of cars is this man, Jules Gounon, as we alluded to. Now, he will be not putting himself under undue pressure, because coming into this weekend, he did somewhat write him and Fabian Schiller out of the championship contendership. He said, you know what, if we get a good result, we might just clinch it. However, I'm not expecting it. After the win yesterday, though, suddenly his spirits turned. He's now going to have to fight hard to just get into the points. P15 is the lowest scoring position. A point, of course, for 15th place. 3-minute board out, though. Let's get ready for the formation lap and the race.
So just to remind you, Gounon will be carrying that 20-kilo penalty as well, if that wasn't enough. It is Christopher Mies who starts on pole position alongside Dennis Marshall. Dries Vanthoor, welcome back. Marco Mappelli, the first non-Audi car on the grid. Then Jan Marszałkowski and Daniel Juncadella make it all Mercedes on row 3. Row 4, Matthias Drudy, first ever ADAC GT Masters champion Christopher Haase alongside Jack Aitken. A long way back for him is alongside Sven Muller on row 5, and on row 6, the legend Marcus Winkelhock alongside Jesse Krohn. Frank Pereira and Ian Chenguven occupy row 7. A lot of work to do there for the Porsche. And Frank Bird and Konsta Lapalainen on row 8 of the grid. Row 9, Luca Engsler and Norbert Siedler. And then all on his lonesome at the back with a mountain to climb. If there's ever a man who can climb mountains, it's got to be that man there, Jules Gounon. And there are a few mountains here at the Sachsenring. It is an undulating track. It has about 12.8% degrees of gradients going into turn 14. Just running up that is a fair bit of effort. It's a very up and down circuit. Lots of fast corners, lots of blind crests, 14 turns, 4 to the right and 10 to the left. The track is 3.671 kilometers around, and that equates to about 2.28 miles. You can see there just confirmation of what we've been telling you all along. The dream weekend for Jules Gounon, having returned after a back injury. It looked for a long time as though he wasn't even going to make it on the grid this weekend, having damaged 2 vertebrae in his back at the end of August in the IMSA Championship. He's come back with much gusto, and yesterday it was the dream ticket. It looked like it was going to be the same again today. The rest of them are breathing a sigh of relief because that half a second he had in qualifying was just on a different level. It does mean now that the whole of the grid is covered by less than a second, which is quite impressive and says a lot about the GT Masters and the balance of performance.
How appropriate that a front row yielded by Audi, controlled by Audi, is fired up by the 1 minute board held by none other than Matthias Ekström, an Audi racing legend. Of course, still a part of that fold with his prospects in Dakar and so on. What a great man he is. Christopher Mee is another Audi legend. He is our pole sitter, a man who has taken 4 victories here in previous years at the Sachsenring. That would actually make him, if he were a manufacturer of cars, he'd be the 3rd most winningest in the history of GT Masters here at Sachsenring. But he has always been powered by Audi when here at the Sachsenring, of course.
There's confirmation of the point situation. A healthy 22 points for Raffaele Marciello, but it can all change in an instant. It often does here at the Sachsenring. It is a track that absolutely courts controversy. It is a track that bites, and when it bites proper hard. So nothing is in the bag. This is the penultimate round of the ADAC GT Masters 2022 Championship. There are still 81 points available in this season. So Raffaele Marciello is by no means home and dry in terms of his championship challenge. And Daniel Juncadella has got to keep out of trouble because starting back on the 3rd row, you are in amongst all the drivers that are charging into that turn 1. And turn 1 is very tricky with a bit of a reverse camber.
Yeah, negative camber on turn-in at turn 1, and then it drops away massively. Signature Sachsenring that, up and down, and that does mean that it can be difficult. I think Raffaele Marciello, a prime example of that yesterday, overshot turn 1, lost the lead from pole position, just a corner into the race, and that was a lead that he and Danny Juncadella would never regain. Juncadella starting from 6th place. I was going to say 7th, but of course the disqualification for Jules Gounon has rather changed things, hasn't it? Juncadella will now get the 3rd row. He'll be on the outside of the 3rd row. He'll be looking to stay out of the firing line.
My notes have got more crossing out on it than you can shake a stick at. Well, I wish they'd just get it right. So the grid is now on its installation lap, formation lap, about to grid up, heading towards turn 12, down the piece of track that is nicknamed the Waterfall. Guess why that is? And now, side by side, they head up the steep climb, the steep 12.8% to be precise, in towards turn 14. This is the view on board of Daniel Juncadella in the Manfilter Team Landgraf Mercedes. The safety car ducks into the pit lane. This is race 12 of a 14-race season for the ADAC GT Masters, and we are go. A great start from Christopher Mies, not a great start from Dennis Marshall. He tries to come back now. Into turn one they come. Mies is well ahead. Marshall suddenly coming back on the outside. That is the 71 car that goes spinning. No, it's the number 14 car, beg your pardon. Konsta Lapalainen spinning into the gravel. He is beat. This is going to be a safety car straight away. I have no doubt about that, because that Lamborghini is going nowhere. Daniel Juncadella making a good start. He is up into 5th place. So it's Christopher Mies who leads the way.
Yeah, great start from Juncadella. Great start from Christopher Mies. Marshall, as you alluded to, did not get off the line brilliantly. The reactions weren't quite in his favour. We rode on board there with Jesse Krohn, who's up into the top 10, and Frankie Bird is on the warpath as well in the 84 Mamba, the junior Landgraf Mamba, if you will. Did they actually make it through turn 8? I'm not sure they did. I think a couple of cars have gone missing down at turn 8 as they were all going 3-4 wide.
One of them, I believe, is the 91 car of Ayan Guven. So it might be, I'm looking at our car tracker. We've got the safety car out now anyway, as anticipated. The race director, Sven Stopper, very wisely allowing the field just to breathe a little bit before throwing a safety car and thus creating more potential carnage. So safety car is out, as we thought it would be. The main beat will be to retrieve the number 14 car, but I'm looking at our driver tracker. The 91 of Ayan Guven is currently the last of the runners on the track. I wonder if he had a problem.
It looked, per the driver tracker, which isn't an exact science, that he and several others, including Jack Aitken in the 63 car, had to take evasive action. It looked like they were trying to go 3-4 wide at turn 8, and that just doesn't go. And unfortunately, Konsta Lapalainen couldn't get through turn 1 either. We get a replay now of the start.
So it was Christopher Mies who was very quick out of the blocks, unlike Dennis Marshall. The number 71 car was okay, and in there it was Konsta Lapalainen who lost it under braking into turn 1, the Lamborghini going spinning. Now let's have a look at the rest of the pack, see if we can pick up on anything else that happened. The 22 car with Sven Muller at the wheel had a bit of a slide on coming out of the corner. This is on view on board with the Schubert Motorsport BMW, and that's driven by Jesse Krohn. And just looking back at the first lap here at Sachsenring, it's always a case of survive the first lap. If everything is pointing in the right direction, then you're good to go. Always a tricky track, and you can see with the onboard camera how short the view is, and it was Ayan Guven who got into the back of the car in front and spun around. And I would like to see that from the outside, and there is damage to that car. I can see their championship slipping away.
So Frankie Bird tried to dive up the inside of Frank Pereira and Aitken. Aitken ended up in the gravel. Pereira got tagged from the rear by Ayan Guven, and it was Guven that got sent into a spin as a result of the contact. There was a lot going on there. We ride on board again with Jesse Krohn. You see the muscling between Aitken and Winkelhock, an exchange of paint. You may remember Marcus Winkelhock collided with the 63 car last time, and huge damage to Luca Engsler's 15 car as well. We saw some bodywork off the car. Lots of damage on the Retronic Audi.
And it all opens up for Jules Gounon, really, doesn't it? Because he sailed through all of that, somehow missed all the carnage, and there's a piece of car out on the track. There's going to be a little bit of clearing up to do, and we have lost Konsta Lapalainen as anticipated. It means that Mick Wieshofer will not even get to sit in the seat of that car this afternoon, and he will be on an early flight home and fairly fed up about that, I have no doubt. To summarise the front of the pack, it's Christopher Mies, who started from pole position, Dennis Marshall, Marco Mappelli, who, as I mentioned earlier, just loves this place, in 3rd, ahead of Dries Vanthoor. Daniel Juncadella already up to 5th place. Raffaele will be pleased about that in the garage, and Jan Marszalkowski in 6th, ahead of Christopher Haas, Matthias Drudy, Sven Muller, Jesse Krohn rounding out the top 10. But a lot of stock car racing further back.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots going on there. Frankie Bird, very ambitious, trying to make an overtake.
Name that piece of car.
Into turn 9. Yeah, I can't quite tell you either. I'm sure there's someone with a bit more expertise in the trade that's yelling it at me. Answers in the comments, I suppose. But Christopher Mies continues to lead the way. A huge shame for Consta and the 14 crew. Of course, they have had a good season. They took a win at Zandvoort and a pole position that day as well. So they have had strong outings, and Emil Frey Racing still very much centred on the team's championship as well. Arntzen Guven is in, Luca Engsler ahead of him as well. So Guven has damage from that collision, unsurprising. Hopefully they can get that car back out on the lead lap while they're still under safety car.
They somehow managed to wrestle that car home yesterday, at least Arntzen did, to 5th place, despite only 3 wheels being inflated on the car. It looks as though this is going to be a first retirement of the season. And for the driver pairing that are lying second in the championship, this is a crushing blow and is going to make it very difficult for them to get back into the championship hunt. We have notification that the safety car is in on this lap, as we see Arntzen Guven just throwing his hands in the air, shaking his head, walking away, all eyes on Hockenheim, and just wishing the worst on the 48 car, I imagine, in terms of the championship positions. But his afternoon well and truly over.
Yeah, that's championship defining moments there. Guven really had nowhere to go as everyone concertinaed in front of him. Ended up in a spin. I think he got a tag from behind as well. He got sandwiched on the apex of turn 9. We go back to green flag. Sadly, 2 cars down, including our second place car in the championship.
So the lights are off on the safety car. It's Christopher Mies who backs the pack up. This is played very nicely into the hands of Jules Gounon as he has to work his way back through the field, having started last. Christopher Mies onto the accelerator already as they head up towards turn 14 to receive the green flag. Dennis Marshall, Marco Mapelli. It's a whole lot easier when they're single file like this, a little less chaotic, a little bit more of a chance just to take a breath, but the challenges are coming from further back. That's Jan Marszałkowski in the pink Mercedes that we saw. Some great views from our drone here, following the cars around. There are the 1, 2, 3 heading around the Castrol Omega turn. That's a big downhill and then a steep uphill climb to a blind crest. The 1, 2, 3, 4, and they looking fairly solid at the moment. It's all to play for. This is a 1-hour race, and there are 52.5 minutes remaining of that, plus 1 lap. There is a mandatory pit stop that will need to be taken by every car on the track, and it has to take place during a pit window. The window will open when the clock strikes 25. It will close again when the clock strikes 35. During that 10-minute window, every car must visit the pits for a mandatory stop and driver change. If that wasn't complicated enough, the cars must not go below 65 seconds from pit entry to pit exit, otherwise there will be a penalty incoming. Fighting going on at the back of the pack, and that's Jack Aitken, who is trying to come back. No, is it from Pereira, you think?
Yeah, it was the 19 car. Okay. Tried to get around Frank Bird, instead loses out to Jules Gounon. Gounon through and ahead of Pereira then. That is a move for 13th place. Gounon on the move. He's got past Norbert Sieder on that lap as well.
And that's Sven Muller to the inside of the BMW. It was 2 different Lamborghinis we were talking about, because Jack Aitken at the back as well trying to push forwards, but Sven Muller there in the 22 car fighting for that position. Some great shots here. Now an investigation on Sven Muller for an inaccurate grid position. So whether that was at the start or at the restart remains to be seen, but car 22 under investigation, so there may be more bad news to that Allied Racing team.
Gets from bad to worse for them. They had a terrible race yesterday. Tyre rub on the Car Collection Motorsport 33 car. That doesn't look good. You can see that they've lost some bodywork in some of the first lap turmoil. Mattia Drudi is going to be well aware that something is amiss there.
It's going to get to the stage where if you are still running at the end, you're going to get points in this race, because they're dropping like flies, aren't they? Now Muller challenging for position. Down the waterfall they come. The 33 car, well, with the potential rubbing bodywork, it would mess around with the temperature of that tyre. You can see from the graphic that Muller has been awarded a trip to the penalty box, though. That means that he will have to slow down to no more than 50 kilometers an hour on the exit of turn 1 and go through the penalty box.
We just saw Mattia Drini coming into the pits there. He is now on the pit limiter. And unless they cannibalise the rear end of that and just get rid of all the bodywork, I suspect that might be another retirement. But to your point, I think if I'm pulling a car in 16th place at this point of the race, given what's happened in the first 10 minutes, I'd be tempted to get out of there get out there again on the basis of, yeah, I probably am going to score points.
Because at the moment, every car that is still running is potentially going to score points. It is Christopher Mies who stands to score the most because he has opened up a lead of nearly a second. In fact, that's opened up a bit more. Right, let's look here again at Sven Muller getting tagged by the Schubert Motorsport BMW of Jesse Krohn. So the 22 car has been in the battles for the last, well, make this 4th race in a row. Rejoins via the grass. So, and I don't know if he's visited the penalty box yet, but if he has, that is going to put him even further back. You can also see the 54 car of Norbert Siedler, another one who has been adjudged to have started in the wrong position and has to visit the penalty box.
Well, so what happened there to Sven Muller? Oh, Christopher Mies! Christopher Mies in from the lead. What's going on with Mies? We've got Marciello going across the gravel. Christopher Mies is in. Just regarding Sven Muller there, he was trying to serve his penalty when he got tagged by Jesse Krohn. That's why he steered across the front of the BMW. But Christopher Mies...
Puncture.
A puncture this early in the race. There's, of course, a lot of carbon fibre down at turn 9 from the various collisions there. I suspect that's the cause of this.
Tension, much tension. You see him light the tyres up as he leaves. There's Einchen Guven and Christian Engelhardt just discussing what has taken place. So our race leader with the puncture into the pits. And now we're looking again at a replay, and that was Einchen Guven getting tagged. The race stewards are going to have an awful lot of work to do here. The incident between Sven Muller and Jesse Krohn is also under investigation. And that is what was remaining of the Luca Engstler car before it peeled off back into the pits. High drama indeed. So our new race leader, Dennis Marshall, after Christopher Mies having pulled out such a big gap at the front, looking like he was going to run away with this race. A flat tyre has scuppered his chances. Marco Mappelli up into 2nd place. Dries Vanthoor up into 3rd. Daniel Juncadella up into 4th. It's like it's coming to them. Daniel Juncadella, Raffaele Marciello, they just hold back. It comes to them.
I tell you what, I reckon that the team down at Allied Racing are going to be on the phone at the moment saying, well, we tried to serve the penalty lap, we got tagged into the penalty zone in a spin and we lost about 15 seconds.
Does that
count? We'll have to see what the decision is there. I dare suggest they're not going to try and serve another penalty lap after that first attempt at it. We've got a good battle here between the Paul Motorsport Lamborghini. That, of course, is currently being driven by Marco Mappelli. 2nd place for them right now. Penalty lap for causing a collision for Jesse Krohn. Oh, that felt a bit inevitable.
You did, didn't it? So first he tips Sven Muller somewhere near it, and then he's got to visit it himself. So stewards have had a look. Yet more penalties incoming. The 1, 2, 3 are looking solid at the moment, but don't hold your breath. Dennis Marshall leading by over 7/10. The last time they crossed the line, I think it's more than that now. Marco Mappelli in 2nd place, but coming under pressure from Dries Vanthoor. Is Dries Vanthoor going to make his return to GT Masters one that counts? It looks like he might do. Look who's in the background. Daniel Juncadella, who, along with championship leader, not Jan Masikowski, Raffaele Marciello in the number 48 car. There is a replay of that moment when the number 10 and the number 22 got together.
I do feel for Jesse Krohn to an extent there, because Sven Muller did drift out wide through turn 1. He had every intention of going to the penalty zone, hence he then went in tight on the exit of turn 1. I think Jesse Krohn expected him to take the racing line at turn 2, as one would expect, and that was kind of the causation of the incident.
Yeah, and you think he's got to decrease his speed a lot more than he normally would into the preceding corner so that he can make the penalty box. And of course, the driver behind doesn't know necessarily that the car in front is going to be heading into the penalty box, so he sees the car suddenly slowing in front of him. But that is all to do with where the penalty box is positioned. it's something that can be argued about into the night, I imagine.
It's a 6 of one, half dozen of other situation, isn't it? Jules Gounon has just moved up into 9th place on the previous lap. He's got by Frankie Bird, and Bird has already dropped off him by the better part of 2 seconds, if not more. It was 1.3 at the line. It's a lot more now. I'm just wondering if Frankie Bird maybe has some problems. Of course, he was involved in that big incident at turn 9. And again, no matter how good the marshal equipped with the broom is, there's always going to be some shards of carbon fibre left after a collision of that size.
I wouldn't rule out Jules Gounon finishing on the podium along with Fabian Schiller, the way he's going. He has got the bit between his teeth. Won't be tied anybody who gets in his way. Marcus Winkelhock, he might want to move aside, who is currently in 8th place. You can see the Mercedes closing in on him. And ahead of them is Jesse Krohn, who has yet to serve that penalty, as far as I'm aware. Still doesn't on that lap. There is Marcus Winkelhock, and there is Jules Gounon just behind him. Around the Castrol-Omegor turn they come. We are only 60 minutes into the race, and there's been so much drama already. Keep an eye on Daniel Juncadella. He is loitering in the background.
Marcus Winkelhock, the next target for Jules Gounon then, in what is now a battle for 8th place. Jesse Krohn up ahead of them. He, of course, has to serve a penalty lap soon, so Jules Gounon is probably going to inherit 8th place as and when that happens. And he will be loving this, because all of the dominoes are falling around him and he remains upright.
Dennis Marchal continues to stretch his legs at the front. The gap, 1.3 seconds, so he's pretty well doubled the gap in the last lap, with Marco Mappelli in 2nd place, still under pressure from Dries Vanthoor, who's just 3/10 behind the Mappelli Lamborghini. Behind them, Daniel Juncadella and Jan Marszalkowski. Solid drive from him ahead of Christopher Haase. Jesse Krohn still waiting to serve that penalty. Then Marcus Winkelhock, Jules Gounon in 9th. Frankie Bird rounding out the top 10. And penalty lap board is visually being shown to the number 10 car now. Maybe the message hadn't got through, and this time he takes that tight inside line, slows down, there ain't no getting away from it, and you can see him pass through the penalty box, and that lets a number of cars through. He drops down behind Franck Pereira, so that'll move him down into 11th position.
Big shame that for Jesse Krohn. I think he and Ben Green would really like to have got a good top 10, if not top 5 finish in today. There were high hopes for the BMW coming into this weekend. The circuit is somewhat similar in character to the Red Bull Ring. Certainly it's similar enough that we're running the same BOP as we ran at the Red Bull Ring. It's a Category C circuit under SRO's BOP system, as is the Red Bull Ring. They had high hopes, but it just hasn't materialised for them. They haven't unlocked whatever magic turn of a spanner that was required seemingly this weekend. And let's hope, for their sake, that they can get back into that top 10.
You're witnessing the battle for 8th place. It's Marcus Winkelhock in the Audi, ahead of Jules Gounon in the...
it's for 7th now, sorry. I was
7th.
Yes, because
of course, because yes, has come through. Our timing screen's yet to update. They will do now. So yes, in fact, it is for 7th place. And that is a battle that is raging on. In the background, Frankie Bird with Franck Pereira behind him. And Jesse Krohn a little way back behind there. Jack Aitken all the way down in 12th place. He will be frustrated about that. And he'll be handing that car over to Albert Costa Balboa after the pit stop. But we continue to look at this battle for 7th place. Marcus Winkelhock, an absolute veteran and legend in motorsport, with another legend, a driver who's writing the record books every time he appears, Jules Gounon, who is working his way back up through the field. Remember, he is carrying that extra 20 kilos as a result of yesterday's win, but that Mercedes is still very rapid.
Yeah, I'd say the Winkelhock family name, perhaps second only to Schumacher in terms of motorsport prestige within Germany. So many great sports car racers, touring car racers, and GT stars have come through the Winkelhock family. And of course, Marcus Winkelhock, the latest of them. He's had a 15-year relationship with Audi over the years. He's been a loyalist to Audi pretty much through that entire stretch of time. And I don't think there are many people who know how to get an Audi R8 GT3 car around the Sachsenring better than him. Dennis Marchal, though, our race leader. We've seen him have pole positions and successes in GT Masters before. I'm sure he'd be eager to get a win on the board for the 27 Retronic car.
He's going all the right ways about it. He's just added 3/10 to the gap. in the lead over Marco Mappelli, who is working hard to defend from the number 29 car. You can see a drive-through penalty for car 84. So Frankie Bird, the next of the drivers to have fallen foul of the stewards, and that is for causing a collision. So stewards working overtime here. The 84, the junior yellow member, is going to have to visit the penalty box as well. We continue to look at this fight for second place.
Well, they've judged it rather harsher than that, of course, because it's not a penalty lap, it's a drive-through penalty. So he's not going to have to drive through the box, he's going to have to drive through the pit lane. Of course, he was the genesis of that huge collision at turn 9 on the first lap. Whisper it quietly, it's not really an overtaking point on an average lap of the Sachsenring, turn 9, and he was going 3 wide into the corner. It was always going to be fine margins if everyone got through cleanly. Unfortunately, they didn't, and given how many races it has affected and hindered, I can understand the logic behind that drive-through penalty.
We got used to seeing penalty box instead of drive-through penalties in this, because that's the way Sven Stopper has wanted to take it. Drive-through penalties becoming increasingly rare, but that was an incident that caused so much trauma as he comes through now to serve that drive-through penalty. There is the big drive-through penalty, a drive-trough penalty according to that graphic, but he has to drive into the trough and out again, keeping to the speed limit. And here is a replay of what that was for, and that was the Lamborghini of Consolappa. No, it wasn't. That was the Jack Aitken one, wasn't it? Going wide into the gravel. There's been so much. I should be taking notes. I need to be writing things down. But this is going to relegate Bird to the back of the pack. He should still be in a position to pick up points at this rate, but he will drop like a stone as a result of that penalty. This, the second place fight, is the closest fight on the track. Marco Mappelli ahead of Dries Vanthoor.
There are times where I feel sorry for our colleagues in Media Centre who have to try and summarise these races into 300 words. We're 3 minutes away from the pit window, and I'm still not quite sure how they're going to summarise 25 minutes of racing in 300 words. We see again more replays. That was Jack Aitken's perspective of the incident.
Yes, and great shots, and there have been so many, it's hard to keep up with it. Oh, let's look at the total. 37, almost 37,500 euros in the race laps for Wells in Africa, the Be Water mission, in association with the ADAC, changing the world sip by sip, and of course donating €4 for every lap completed by every car in the ADAC GT Masters for work towards providing clean drinking water in the Gambia, amongst other places.
Yeah, and at the start of the weekend, that was a shade under 33,000 euros, so it does go up a lot over the course of a race weekend. And good to see BWT and ADAC in synergy on that particular cause. Jules Gounon still fighting hard for his cause, and that's a top 5 finish. He's trying very hard to get around Marcus Winkelhock, who is proving to be the ultimate roadblock currently for the Frenchman in the Drago Racing ZVO car. Of course, he got the win yesterday. He got a win last year with what was the Zach Speed team, which is kind of the genesis of what is now Team ZVO. And he is, well, going to struggle to get the win from here. That said, it's already been a wild race, but you would say a couple more positions between he and Fabian Schiller, very much possible.
Indeed, as we are now about 2 minutes away from the pit window opening. Of course, this is very much a team sport, and whatever state the car is in has to be handed over to the co-driver, including the tyres. And I wonder, you know, whether there's certainly a bit of revenge that goes on here. Certainly talking to Daniel Juncadella yesterday, I said, how were the tyres when Raffaele Marciello handed over to you? I was a little bit worn, maybe a little bit worn. And I'd say he's driving quite conservatively at the moment, so maybe he's not going to return the compliment to Raffaele Marciello. That being said, he has closed in on this battle for second place. And Marco Mappelli, well, it does look as though he is holding up Dries Vanthoor to a degree, and soon to be Daniel Juncadella. They seem to be closing in on him, and it might be that the cars behind go for an early pit stop to try and get the undercut on that Lamborghini and try and get out in front of it.
Quite possibly, yes. Mapelli has fallen off the back of Marshall over the course of this stint. Dennis is going to be delighted with his performance, I'd say, in the early stages of this race. An unexpected windfall, the race lead, though, of course, because Christopher Mies came in for a with a puncture. He inherited pole. He inherited the lead because of the pole, and now, unfortunately, he's down in 14th position.
And he is some 41 seconds off the lead. Of course, if we get another safety car, and I really wouldn't bet against it here at the Sachsenring, that would help him enormously to close that gap up. But he's still got to catch and pass the cars in front. So it's a long afternoon for Christopher Mies and co-driver Tim Zimmerman. It is Marco Mapelli who is having his best showing of the season so far. He got a 3rd place back at the Sachsenring, and he will be looking to better that if he can stay in that 2nd place. There are an awful lot of cars behind that are looking to relieve him of that. The pit window is open. Very soon we will start to see cars coming into the pits. You'll see on your graphic which ones have come in. The grey P means that it's still the first driver that is in the seat. When the P goes dark, it means the 2nd driver is in the seat. If the P goes red, it means that they have gone below the minimum pit stop time and will be visiting potentially the penalty box. So we'll keep an eye, see what the strategy unfolds here, and see who blinks first in terms of pitting. I would suggest that Dennis Marshall might want to stay out for as long as possible because he has got absolutely nobody in front of him. Thierry Vermeulen, Matthias Drudy in the number 33 car is about half a lap ahead of him, and there's nobody else in front of him, so he might want to stay out a long time. Someone who is coming in early, Daniel Juncadella. I should think Raffaele Marciello is chomping at the bit to get into the yellow Mamba, and here he is, helmeted, ready to go. Daniel Juncadella comes to a stop. Marciello helping him to get out of the car. Also in, Jules Gounon, he's had enough. Fabian Schiller will be on standby to take over. It'll be his first time in the seat of that car today. So that will be progress to take over for Fabian Schiller. We've got Marciello now into the car. Daniel Juncadella helping him to get buckled up, get the net across, shut the door. And now we have to wait for the clearance to get back out on the track. Remember, there is that minimum pit stop time of 65 seconds. They do not want to go below that. Christopher Mies is in, handing it over to Tim Zimmerman. And just look and see who else it is. The 33 car, so Matthias Drudy handing over to Thierry Vermeulen.
Yeah, not long until the leaders come back around. They're already at the penultimate corner right now. So these guys that were 20 to 30 seconds off the lead prior to pitting are probably going to come out around the leader. That could be interesting, as if we haven't had enough drama already. Raffaele Marciello back out onto the circuit. I suspect he will be right on the pace. He's going to try and salvage a podium with the undercut here, if he possibly can. Oh, and that was a bit of a tricky release there, wasn't it? Between the 33 team, Matthias Drudy trying to get the car back to his garage rather innocently. Wasn't expecting a bright yellow Mamba to suddenly appear in his right-hand vision, left-hand vision.
Do not mention pit stops to Manfilter Team Landgraf, Raffaele Marciello in particular. It has to be said that you could say unsafe release. They have said that they will allow it to be a little bit closer in the pit lane to allow the cars to get back out. Of course, the stewards may take a look at that. I don't think they will, personally. Daniel Juncadella, you saw him going back into the garage. Now, this is looking like a problem for Fabian Schiller. I don't think he can get the thing started.
Oh, that's a huge shame for Fabian Schiller. He's shaking his head. It was such a good job from Jules Gounon to carve himself right back into the top 10 after a disqualification. No fuel sample after a fabulous qualifying this morning. Now in the race, it seems the car has cried enough. And this, again, is a huge factor in the championship because, of course, we've already lost Guben and Engelhardt, and now Schiller and Gounon also a non-score potentially.
I should think this championship, somebody's out the back gift wrapping it for Raffaele Marciello at the moment, because every challenger seems to fall by the wayside in some ways. The disqualification this morning seems less harsh, because if they'd have gone out the lead with this, it would have hurt even more. So Fabian Schiller, he didn't even get to drive the car. You can see how despondent he is. Clearly a mechanical issue stopping him from rejoining. I don't know if the engine started up or whether he was unable to get into gear. Whatever it was terminal for the Drago Racing Team ZVO Mercedes, and another car bites the dust.
this could potentially, I don't think we're going to see Marchiello claim the championship today, but he's going to come within 5 or 6 points of doing so if things stay roughly as they are, especially if he can get himself onto the podium. Of course, the closest title contender that is still running is the Jack Aitken Albert Costa Balboa car, which has had its fair share of dramas. As you say, gift wrapped, signed, sealed, and well, it's on the way in the post. It's not yet delivered for Marchiello, but they've taken a huge step forward, courtesy of other misfortunes.
Sven Muller has come into the pits. He's had enough. Handing over the Allied Racing Porsche to Joel Stern. We continue to ride with our race leader, Dennis Marshall, staying out late in the window as we anticipated he might before he hands over to Kim Louis Schramm. But he has a clear track in front of him, so he's got the opportunity to just keep banging in hot lap after hot lap after hot lap with nobody in the way. There really is no reason to risk coming in, risk coming out into traffic. So it's Dennis Marshall who still leads from Marco Mappelli. Jan Marszałkowski is up into 3rd place as a result of pit stops, and Christopher Haase into 4th. Marcus Vinkhok in 5th ahead of Frank Pereira, Jesse Krohn and Jack Aitken. Of course, they've all got to make pit stops yet, as indeed has Norbert Siedler. The rest of the cars you can see on your graphic there have performed their pit stops. It's Yusuf Vega who's taken over from Dries Vanthoor, and this will be a factor when the pit stops are done and dusted. We'll keep an eye on the number 29 Motoplast by Land Audi.
Jan Marszałkowski, I don't know what it is about him and this circuit. He got his first win here in ADAC GT4. I don't just mean in the class, his first win, full stop, in ADAC GT4 several years ago. He got the best result of the year for both himself and Marvin Dienst yesterday with that 4th place result. And, well, currently in for 3rd, but there's still a long way to go.
Hang on, there's a phone call. Jan Marszałkowski's saying, don't say it.
Yes, I imagine he'll probably give me a message later on. The tone of the message depends greatly on how the next 28 minutes and 50 seconds go.
The second word might be off.
Yes.
So, the top 9 haven't pitted yet. There is the race leader. It's Dennis Marshall, who is staying out late in the window. Of course, he needs to be careful. Ask Nicky Katzberg about making sure you stay in the pit window because, of course, the Schubert Motorsport BMW last time out, they missed the window and incurred a penalty that was almost measured in days. Right, that is Fabian Schiller, a replay. And you can hear the engine was running, but that sounds like an electrical issue, or was it transmission? No, it's not starting, was it?
Yeah, that's the ignition trying to fire
start.
up. Yeah,
absolutely. He was in there, and you can see him beckoning the team to come over. I'm nervous because we've got this mic'd up.
Yes.
Keep talking. Rhubarb.
Now you've asked me for words, I can't provide them. What I can tell you is that the leaders are very close to coming towards pit entry. Are we going to see them in this time? We've got 2 minutes and 45 seconds of the window left to go. And there is an inconsolable Fabian Schiller putting his helmet away for the day rather earlier than he had hoped and intended. And didn't get a chance to drive the car at all today, of course, since it was Jules Gounon that qualified it. The top 4 all stay out for the time being. Marcus Winkelhock in from a 5th place.
Christopher Haase having a good run here. He has closed up on Jan Marszałkowski, but of course he will be handing it over to the youngest driver in the field very shortly. That will be Salman Vega. A little over 2 minutes of the pit window open. We're all watching this very closely because we all remember what happened at Sachsenring. Dennis Marshall, I believe, will need to pit this time around. Am I right? We will see him no doubt peel into the pits out of turn 14. There is the 69 car, and that is also not looking like there's much urgency going on there. I wonder if there's an issue for that car as well. There is the 54 car that is being driven by Norbert Siedler, still yet to pit, so running in 8th place. And the Tim Zimmerman #1 car is behind, but of course a lap down, having had the mandatory pit stop. So we are into a minute and a half left of the pit window. I'm expecting our leader to peel into the pit lane any second now. Stand by your beds. And yes, the car 27 there's a sigh of relief as we have seen what's happened in the past. So the remaining cars who haven't pitted now peeling into the pit lane. It's our race leader, Dennis Marshall, who is in, ready to hand over to Kim Louis-Schramm. Of course, remember, they had a third place yesterday. They're carrying a 5 kilogram success penalty. Marco Mappelli is in to hand over to Max Paul. I tell you what, since Paul Motorsport took over the running of that team, they have come alive.
Yes, I think there were times where perhaps Max Paul's input from the driver's seat wasn't translated directly to the crew. It now seems to be a much more synergized pit box, and it seems to be paying dividends for them. Great results at the Lausitz-Ring, even better results potentially on the cards here at the Sachsenring. However, what we are about to see is going to be a telling few seconds, because the cars that have left their stops until the end are heading out, and we'll see where they come out relative to the likes of Yusufo Vega and Raffaele Marciello.
So Vega just coming out of turn 14 now. You see him coming over the crest of the hill with Raffaele Marciello behind, and I'd have to say, well, they've just about held onto it. Marciello maybe hasn't had the rub of the green there. He's fallen back behind Marvin Dienst in the other of the Mercedes. So I would suggest the Yellow Mamba has not won in that pit stop. Our leader remains the same as it was before the pit stop sequence. It's Kim Louis-Schramm now who takes over from Dennis Marshall, but it's the same car in the lead. Is Max Paul in second, ahead of Yusufo Vega. Marvin Dienst, who's taken over from Jan Marszalkowski, and then Raffaele Marciello in fifth. Now let's see whether he is going to challenge Marvin Dienst. I would expect him to do something like that. Still, that fight for second place continues. That Lamborghini, that pesky Paul Motorsport Lamborghini. And what can Yusufo Vega do about the number 71 car that is in front of him and has been in front of that car all race long?
Yeah, Marco Mappelli was struggling earlier on in the Paul Motorsport Lamborghini, wasn't he? And now up the inside goes Vega in the 29. Yusufo Vega through into second place. Marvin Dienst is going to say, I'd like a bit of that, but Raffaele Marciello says, well, if you try, so am I. For now, Paul holds on to third place, but he's got a pair of Mercedes barreling down on him.
And in the background, that was Salmon and Vega going wide, but look at this, Dienst and Marciello running side by side into turn one. Dienst has the line into the corner under braking. Marciello needs to go the long way round. He can't really do anything there. Dienst cuts across to keep that inside line through the corner, and Marciello has to settle for the place behind, which is fifth at the moment, but the challenge continues, and Marvin Dienst, though, is in front. Marvin Dienst returning to GT Masters this year after quite a long time away. He has been something of a revelation, along with Jan Marszalkowski. They've been fantastic in that Mercedes.
Yeah, it really is great to see Marvin Dienst in GT Masters again. He has been all dominance in ADAC.
They're all covering their eyes.
I know.
That's what I was doing as well.
Indeed, yeah. I don't blame anyone at Team Landgraf for maybe not having this as appointment viewing. Only through the eyelids is it maybe appointment viewing. I tell you what, Marciello there looked very, very slow through turns 11 and 12. I wonder if he's got a problem. Huge championship implications. If so, he's falling off the back of these two, scrapping for third place. Max Paul getting the elbows out to stave off the advances of Marvin Dienst.
Brilliant stuff. So the fight now going on for third place as Marvin Dienst putting the pressure on. It looks like Marciello is back up to speed, so whether he had a problem, whether he went wide, I should think that the other championship contenders are at the back sticking in the pins into their model yellow Mambas. But it's not working at the moment because Marciello appears to be coming back. Behind him is Salmon Vega. This, as you can see, is the battle for third. It's Marvin Dienst versus Max Paul for the last of the podium positions. How much would Marvin Dienst and Jan Marszalkowski love to be on the podium?
So what we saw there was Raffaele Marciello finding the marbles. I thought for a minute, just because of the sheer amount of understeer he was suffering up at turn 11, that perhaps he had a puncture or some damage, but it is just the marble factor. We walked around the circuit on Friday when they'd only done one day of running, and the marbles were already there in abundance.
It feels like only a matter of time before Marvin Dienst finds a route past into that third place. He's looking very eager. Max Paul still relatively new to racing. He came from go-karting straight into GT3 racing a couple of years back. It was a baptism of fire. He has really found some speed this year, but the pressure of Marvin Dietz behind is the pressure of Marvin Dietz behind, I forgot what I was talking about then, is really quite intense, and not to mention Raffaele Marciello as well. He has an awful lot of pressure from behind now. Max Paul having to use every trick that he's got as they head along the pit straight in towards turn one. He's a fair distance away, a little bit of a wobble under braking, but he cuts back, he gets the apex of the corner, and Marvin Dietz still staring at the back. Now, if Marvin Dietz tries to challenge Max Paul, it might be that Raffaele Marciello will get through. So suddenly the dynamic of this battle changes as the Yellow Mamba comes back into it.
Max Paul is currently the favourite racing driver of Ian Chen Guven, Christian Engelhardt, Fabian Schiller, Jack Aitken, Albert Costa, Jules Gounon. The list goes on. As long as he keeps Marciello off the podium, that is ever in their favour. There goes Dietz with a massive move at turn 9 up the inside. That's such a rare manoeuvre, and now the doors are open.
Yeah, Marciello follows through as well. So suddenly Max Paul, having held on to that third place along with Marco Mappelli, is relegated 2 positions in one go. And now Salman Vega will be nibbling out the heels as well. Look how quickly Marvin Dietz has broken clear. He has left him in his wake. And Raffaele Marciello there. There's Salman Vega going very wide out into the scenery. He gets it back onto the track. No issues there, but the tyres are going to be a bit dirty. But still, he closes in on Max Paul. The Lamborghini doesn't appear to have the pace that they need here at the Sachsenring.
No, they're struggling, aren't they, in race pace? They're good enough in qualifying, but across the race distance, it does seem they struggle. Well, Max Paul was all the championship contenders' favourite racing driver, and then no sooner did I say that than Marvin Dietz saw the door crack open and said, absolutely, up the inside at turn 9. I was a bit worried about side-by-side at turn 9, based on the evidence we saw a little earlier on, but you see there, once Max Paul was offline, struggling for traction, Raffaele Marciello really had an easy bye to get through.
And that's how it should be done. I think all the championship contenders are now donning their pink jackets as we look at our race leaders coming through. That was Yusufa Vega actually in second place, then Marvin Dietz, then Raffaele Marciello, then Max Paul. Salman Vega, who looks to be a man on a mission in the middle of much of the controversy at Sachsenring last time out. But that was good, clean passing of the Max Paul car. It shows it can be done. And really entertaining stuff, but not so much for Max Paul. It is, of course, one of his home tracks. He has 2 home tracks, in fact, here and the Sachsenring, but not enjoying the rub of the green at the moment. He lives in Dresden, which is not far from here. There is the championship positions if the race finishes now. To remind you, there are still 81 points available at the moment, whilst this race is still running, and Engelhardt and Guven would be 35 points behind, so it's starting to get like a bit of a stretch. They all are wishing that something would happen to the Yellow Mamba that would allow them to close back up.
Yeah, of course, if it does finish in the manner which we just showed on the projected points there, they have 56 points to try and get 35 more than Marciello. That would be very difficult. It would require Raffaele Marciello to have a really terrible weekend. Horribilis, as they would have said in Latin. Weekend horribilis. That is unlikely to befall Raffaele, who's had a good run of form so far this year. But then there is always that little, I believe the internet calls it lizard brain, that little part of you that goes, yes, but what if my run of form runs out? What if the luck comes to an end? I'm sure Raffaele will be in no mood to talk to anybody at Hockenheim with the championship in the balance.
It's interesting, just looking at him coming down the waterfall there. They have spaced out again, and he has dropped back. I do wonder whether they're running out of rubber a little bit on those tyres, but suddenly, having been harassing Marvin Dietz, it looks to me as though Marciello has dropped back a little. We look again at the race laps for Wales and Africa, 38,344. Come on, keep going, 48. 52, please. There you go. That is how much money has been raised lap by lap in the race Wells for Africa, providing clean drinking water in mainly rural areas of the Gambia and Tanzania, changing the world sip by sip with BW2. Great, BWT, not BW2. Great job. And there is Florian Spengler running in 7th place. A good run for the car collection Motorsport Audi. It could be their best result of the season if these things finish as they are now. Behind them, Arthur Rougier. You know what? Arthur plays the piano very well indeed. He's a very mean piano player. There you go, a bit of information for you. And behind them, Ben Green looking to come back from what has been a traumatic start to the race in 9th place. But the BMW is starting to come alive a bit.
Yeah, so Florian Spengler and Marcus Winkelhock are yet to score a top 10 so far this year, sat in 7th place at the moment, as you alluded to. That would be by far their best result of the season. Arthur Rougier, they're getting a bit unsettled at the top of the waterfall at turn 11. The pacey pianist, as I'm going to call him from now on, is trying very hard.
Be careful how you say that.
I know.
That'll never be heard again. Arthur Rougier in that 8th place. Yeah, Ben Green, it feels like the BMW is just coming to him a little bit. It was a traumatic start to the race, but Ben Green, one of the real superstars, up and coming, going forward. Remember, he and co-driver Niklas Kruten took back-to-back wins at the Red Bull Ring. We expected quite a lot from the Schubert Motor Racing BMW here at the Sachsenring. Of course, he has not raced here before up until this weekend, so Ben Green has had to learn this, the most unusual of circuits.
Oh,
problems! That is Yusuf Vega. So Yusuf Vega, the next car to suffer with tyre issues. Of course, it was Dries Vanthoor who started off with that. Yusuf Vega, who was in 2nd place and now has to crawl back to the pits. He is a long way back from the pits. So he's up in turn 8 at the moment. He is going to have to go very slowly. If he tries to come back too quickly, the puncture tyre is going to do damage to the bodywork. There's Dries Vanthoor looking frustrated in the... No, it looks like Christopher Haase to me, but looking frustrated in the garage. The Audi crawling. It's a long way back to the pit lane, and this is going to drop them to the back of the pack.
Huge shame for them. 2nd consecutive race where they've had a puncture on the right rear tyre. They had it on the very final lap in the first race yesterday. Dries Vanthoor losing a couple of positions because of that. But Yusuf Vega was right up there at the sharp end of the order, and now he is limping the car home into an inevitable retirement. Of course, this bumps everybody up a position. That gives Raffaele Marciello more points, and it puts him onto the podium. Marvin Dienst up to P2 in the number 8 car.
Someone has just put a ribbon on the championship wrapping for Raffaele Marciello, because it's just like a yellow ribbon, tyre yellow ribbon. There you go, one for the old folk. That is definitely, everything seems to be coming to him. Marvin Dienst, Jan Marszalkowski, they will be delighted at the sight of that 29 car going slowly, because that, as already mentioned, bumps them up into 2nd place. It means that, and he's retiring it. Or has he retired it, or has he just run off the track? This could bring out a safety car.
He's tried to retire the car, and he's got himself beat on the run down to turn 13 at Saxon. That is a huge error for him there. It was understandable. He wanted to get out of the way as he was about to get lapped by the field, but unfortunately he's ended up in a dangerous place. I'd be very surprised if they don't feel that car needs a recovery of some description.
It's got to. They can't leave it there. There's Wolfgang Land looking frustrated, and that is a nightmare scenario. Surely they can't leave that there for the remainder. They might do, I guess. They could solve it under full course yellow, and in fact it looks as though they might actually be able to tow it without getting any marshals anywhere near the track. They really need to move a Vega from the side of the car there, but I think they're going to try and tow it without going to a safety car.
Well, they've got a trusty Volkswagen Touareg there on standby. If that's the diesel V12 one, that's very talky, and I reckon it'll tow a beached Audi, no problem. The 29 car, it was just a matter of thinking, right, I'm in the way here, and I'm going very slowly at one of the fastest parts of the circuit. Fully understand the psychology behind trying to get the car out of the way, but then it was in the way.
the hills bite, and there is the Motorsport by Land team looking very frustrated, and Wolfgang Lander there as well looking very frustrated. Our race leader comes around, Kim-Louis Schramm, of course, going past the yellow. The drivers need to be seen to have lifted off, and we need to be careful that any speeding and certainly any overtaking under a yellow flag will be viewed with great disdain, and the stewards will be keeping an eye on that. Here comes our race leader, some 3.8 seconds ahead of Marvin Dienst.
But I've been watching that gap, and it's been coming down by over 3/4 of a second in the last couple of laps in favour of Marvin Dienst. Last time by a 1:21.545 for Kim-Louis Schramm, a 1:20.792 for Marvin Dienst. He's got time. He might close in. Can he get past?
And of course, in the background all the while is Raffaele Marciello, just 8.6 seconds behind them. Riding on board with Ben Green, he's currently in 8th place. Ahead of him is still the Arthur Rougier piano-playing car. Florian Spengler in front, and those three cars have been fighting each other for some time. It's still Spengler who has 6th place, 7th for Rougier, 8th for Ben Green. Behind them, Albert Costa Balboa very much having a quiet afternoon. This is one they're going to want to forget at the Emil Frey Racing Garage.
Yeah, a weekend, I think, in general, that has been extremely challenging for them. Yesterday, of course, we had Balboa and Aitken fairly high up the grid at the start of the race, but they had a differential issue in the race yesterday. That's why the car looked quite so unwieldy in both the hands of Balboa and Jack Aitken. And today, things have not gone much better for any of the three crews at the Swiss Emil Frey Racing team.
We're certainly not counting any chickens here at the Sachsenring, because most certainly tyre issues have been the story of the weekend. And I should think that all of the cars that are still running will be pleased to see the checkered flag just get to the end, because any one of these cars could be in trouble if the tyre issues strike. You see the young fans looking on. There is a massive crowd here at the Sachsenring to view the ADAC GT Masters this weekend. A lot of them are in yellow. Some great marketing from Manfilter and Team Landgraf, giving out free merchandise to many of the fans. They've all got their yellow hats and their yellow flags. I'm sat here and all I can see is a sea of yellow.
Very true. The Manfilter branding all over the shot here, including on the bonnet of this 48 car. Raffaele Marciello there in 3rd place, a rather lonely 3rd place. He's losing time to Marvin Dienst. Dienst, meanwhile, took another second out of Kim-Louis Schramm on the previous lap, and he's going quicker and quicker on this lap too. He gained half a second in Sector 1, another 4/10 in Sector 2. Dienst is going to be about 1.5 seconds off the lead, I'd suggest, this time by.
Don't forget that Kim-Louis Schramm is carrying a 5-kilogram success penalty as a result of yesterday's 3rd place. You might not think that's much, but every kilo counts here, and that 5 kilo will be slowing him slightly. You can see now the gap between 1st and 2nd as they head into turn 1. There is 3rd place, a fairly lonely race for Raffaele Marciello, and I would say even he might be happy with 3rd place after a race like today, just getting to the end. Max Paul is into 4th as a result of the retirement we saw earlier, then Salman Ovega, then Florian Spengler, Arthur Rougier and Ben Green. And in the background, you just saw Albert Costa Balboa as well. And he is actually closing in on Ben Green, so it might be giving him something to think about as this race progresses. We have a little over 8 minutes plus 1 lap remaining. Do not go anywhere, because anything could happen, and probably will. Kim-Louis Schramm is leading the way, praying that the tyres stay up. Dennis Marshall is watching from behind a cushion in the garage. The 27 car looking for its first win of the year for Rutronic Racing here at the Sachsenring.
2 podiums to this point in the season at the Red Bull Ring and rather at Zandvoort, and here yesterday with a 3rd place finish. They will be on tenterhooks in the Rutronic Racing garage. You can see there from this camera angle on the side skirt on the right-hand tyre, you can practically see the marbles coming off that tyre on the right side of the car, where of course all of the load is directed to at this circuit. We've got 10 left-hand bends. Many of them are taken at a great pace, and that means that the right side of the car, both the front and rear tyre, goes through a lot. That's why pretty much all of the punctures you've seen today have gone to the right rear or the right front, usually the right rear, as pressure being applied by Arthur Rougier. Rougier trying to find a way around Florian Spengler, who is putting on a fabulous defensive drive. Of course, he is now up to 6th place, inherited after the problem for Yusuf Ovega a few laps ago. So we've got a 4-car train as Florian Spengler gets the elbows out. He's driving through the rear view mirrors. It's a good thing he's done a fair few laps of this circuit because he doesn't have to look out the windscreen that much. He's got Rougier, then Ben Green, and then Albert Costa Balboa, who will be aching to get himself up a few more places before the end of this race. They already acknowledged that it's a long shot, the championship in the 63 crew. Jack Aitken certainly said, you know what, it is the mother of all long shots at this point. That was this morning, and I don't think that's really changed this afternoon. However, they are also working very hard to try and net Emil Frey Racing that team's championship.
A little over 6 minutes plus 1 lap remaining of this race. It's Kim Louis Schramm who leads the way. Now just 0.8 of a second behind is Marvin Dienst. This is all to play for. I believe Kim Louis Schramm and Dennis Marshall are looking for their first ever race win in ADAC GT Masters. And now the challenge comes from Albert Costa Balboa. He has the inside line, but Ben Green has that fast side going down the pit straight. He will be on the inside as they head into turn 1.
And Rougier with a nose ahead of Florian Spengler, but he's got the outside line for turn 1. Spengler once again survives in this battle for 6th place. Costa Balboa remains behind Ben Green as well. Both of the Emil Frey Racing cars were on the attack there.
As you were, but Lamborghini's attack. We're keeping an eye on the lead battle. 0.8 of a second last time around. Hopefully we'll see that again in a minute. Kim Louis Schramm is going to have his mirrors filled with pink before too long. All these drivers in the first and the second place looking for their first ever win. I don't think Marvin Dienst has ever won in ADAC GT Masters. Certainly Jan Marszałkowski hasn't, but the heat is on. Newcomers coming to the fore is Kim Louis Schramm leading the way with co-driver Dennis Marshall, but the pressure is on all the way down through the field. And here we go. This is first and second. You can see the gap between them. Now Marvin Dienst is going to be challenging for that lead, heading along the pit straight. He's in the slipstream, maybe too far back on this lap, but maybe the next time around the pink Mercedes is going to launch an attack on the number 27 car. Through the Castrol Omega turn is, well, that's just coming up now. Here comes Kim Louis Schramm around that turn. Marvin Dienst just filling his mirrors, trying to pressure him into a mistake. Certainly Schramm and Marshall looking for their first ever win. Marszałkowski looking for his first ever win, and I think potentially Marvin Dienst too. Now they head up the hill, down the hill, and around under the bridge in just a few moments, and soon it will be Dienst who will be making that challenge for the lead. Has he got the patience to wait until turn 14, or is he going to try something before then?
Oh, it's in the balance, isn't it? Marvin Dienst has taken a win in GT Masters before, back in 2020, along with Philipp Frommenweiler with Schütz Motorsports. In 2020, but he hasn't had many tastes of glory in GT Masters. He looks to the inside there.
Wow.
He may have got it done.
Into turn 13, they make a bit of contact. Schramm goes wide, a little bit of a bump, but Marvin Dienst says, turn 14, I don't need to wait till then, I'm through. We have a new leader. Marvin Dienst along with Jan Marszałkowski. You can see the emotion, you can see the nerves, and that is the Rutronic Racing Pits. Kim Louis Schramm and Dennis Marshall also looking for the debut win. Let's have a look again in towards turn 13, down the waterfall. He sees the gap on the inside. There is a little bit of a bump, but Kim Louis Schramm, I think he's running out of tyres.
Yeah, 100%. That's been pretty clear for the last 10 or so minutes. I think all of the mid and rear engine cars really suffer with the right rear tyre. Joy and nerves in equal measure there for Jan Marszałkowski. I think any thinking and feeling man can read that face at the moment. And the team watching on there at Manfilter. I love that Team Landgraf react regardless of which car it is on the circuit having a moment.
It's a Mercedes.
indeed. Very true.
So Kim Louis Schramm has fallen back quite significantly from Marvin Deans, who leads the way.
He's gone. I think he didn't come through there in second place, did he?
I thought he did. Let's have another look in a moment.
He did.
I think our time screen's delayed,
Sorry.
but Ben Green just going a little bit wide there as well. Albert Costa Balboa, the excitement here, a little over 2 minutes remaining, and the form book has been turned upside down. High drama here in race 12 of this 14-race season for the ADAC GT Masters. Marvin Deans and Jan Marszałkowski are leading the way. 38,000, nearly 39,000 euros in the race laps for Wales in Africa. Keep an eye on that. Keep the laps coming. I would say we could do with another hour of racing, but I don't think anybody's ticker can take the pressure. Kim Louis Schramm still in second place, but dropping like a stone. He is 2.1 seconds behind the race leader. All Marvin Deans needs to do now is keep it pointing in the right direction and keep the tyres up. 1.5 minutes plus 1 lap. We are looking at the battle for 8th place. Ben Green in the BMW, coming under pressure from Albert Costa Balboa.
Albert Costa Balboa, a driver that never has a half measure in his bones, in his soul. He looks to the quarter panel there of Ben Green, tried to get it up the inside at the second apex of Castrol Omega. There wasn't a Lamborghini's width forthcoming. He's trying to find one at 7 and 8. He might just get it. Tries to stick it up the inside at turn 8. They're side by side. That's going to set him up nicely for the run to T9. Ben Green ended up on the marbles there. He ran out of traction and had to give way.
So looking back from the perspective of Albert Costa Balboa as he moves up into 8th place, into the final minute of timed racing, and then we will be into the +1 lap. We're still keeping one eye on the leaders. The battles are raging up and down the pack. That is Joel Sturm, who is now closing in on Ben Green, and it looks like Ben Green is struggling for traction in the BMW.
Yes, he is, and now it's going to be Joel Sturm that comes up on him. Sturm in that 22 is watching Ben Green struggle, and struggle he very much is. I heard the M4 GT3 car was a bit lighter on its feet and a bit lighter on its tyres than its predecessor, the M6, but it does seem to be struggling the final minutes. This is how it was done. There was a little bit of contact there between Costa Balboa and Green, but it was minimal, and I think it was inevitable that there was going to be an overtake. I'm not convinced, though, that Joel Sturm may not already be by Ben Green. It looked like he was very close at turn 1.
The clock has struck 0. There is about a lap and a half left on this, and that is Kim Louis Schramm, the second place car. He is out, and it looks like he was slowing earlier. Now, I don't think it was a crash. I think the car has just let go. It's a tyre. That's a tyre, isn't it? Raffaele Marciello is going to get second place, and this is going to elevate Max Paul back onto the podium. The cars are dropping like a stone. At the moment, our race leader is coming across the line to start his final lap of the race. All that hard work for Kim Louis Schramm and Dennis Marshall. At one point, it looked like they were going to win this race, and now they are non-finishers.
Max Paul has Salmon Vega all over the back of him, though, so yes, he's elevated to the podium as of now, but let's see what happens in 2.2 miles and 3.6 kilometres. Marvin Deans just needs to nurse this car home now for the ZVO team. Their title contending car is in the garage. They'd really like to see this one cross the line first.
I actually think Marvin Deans is listening to every clink and every clonk. He is just praying that everything holds together. Most of all, he is praying that the tyres stay up on that pink Mercedes. Here he comes up towards turn number 10, up over the crest of the hill into turn 11, and then down the waterfall for one last time. It will be quite the win for Marvin Deans and Jan Marszałkowski. Just a couple more corners to go. Down the waterfall they come, in towards turn 13. They took over the lead when others fell by the wayside. They were solid. They were there all the time. Up towards turn 14. The pink Mercedes comes for Drago Racing Team ZVO. It's a win for Marvin Deans and Jan Marszałkowski. Raffaele Marciello is going to cross the line in second place. He's some way back. You can see the celebrations. There is Marciello. And now we wait to see who crosses the line in third place.
It should be Max Paul. He's held him off to the final corner. Is Max still there? Yes, he is. It's a podium for Max Paul and for Marco Mappelli. Mapelli, third place, just like the Lausitz-Ring.
Unbelievable stuff. What a race. So much drama, so many twists and turns. Marvin Dienst, his first win in 2 years. And Jan Marszalkowski, his first win ever in ADAC GT Masters. He was so downbeat after the Lausitz-Ring. He'd had traumas. He took time out over the summer. He raced in some other stuff. He pulled himself back together and he's come back a new man. I spoke to him on Thursday and he says, I feel alive again. I'm back in love with racing, and he has proven it. Yesterday, they got a 4th place together. Today, it's the top step for the number 8 car.
This morning, after qualifying, I saw him briefly. We didn't exchange words, but we exchanged looks, and he wasn't so happy with the qualifying performance. 3rd row of the grid, it was okay, seemed to be the general vibe of Jan Marszalkowski, but they've taken the win. Marvin Dienst and Jan, when those two came together after Danny Juncadella was transferred into this car, along with Raffaele Marciello, myself and you, Brian, we both looked at each other and went, that's quite handy, that.
Yeah.
And, well, it's proven now a victory for Dienst and a first victory for Jan Marszalkowski.
And Raffaele Marciello has one hand on the championship trophy as we head into the final round at the end of October. 2 more races left this season, both at the Hockenheim Ring. And Marciello, that's 2nd place. Another haul of points to go with his 2nd place from yesterday and his points from pole position yesterday. We look at a replay, though, of their headline stealers today. Marvin Dienst and Jan Marszalkowski. And Drago Racing Team Zevio will draw some comfort from that because, of course, Jules Gounon and Fabian Schiller running in the sister car and had all that misfortune earlier on and were unable to finish the race. But the sister car still leading the way and taking the top step of the podium.
And a late twist in the tail that also favours Raffaele Marciello. Car 63 gets both a 3 and a 5-second time penalty for, quote, incorrect overtaking. I believe that means a total of 8 seconds added to the race time, and that drops them down to 8th place behind Ben Green, but just ahead of Joel Sturm. So less points, fewer points scored by Balboa and Aitken. Quids in even more for this man, Marciello.
Raffaele Marciello, who is the only driver who is at the top of the championship because his co-driver has changed several times throughout the year. But he is in a very strong position as we go into the last round. And Max Paul crawling from the car, tripping over the fence, why don't you? And great to see the Paul Motorsport Lamborghini back on the podium yet again. Once you start, you can't stop winning. And look at there at the point situation, just 42 points between, well, I say just, there is the massive gap of 42 points between 1st and 2nd. And there will be 56 points available at the Hockenheim Ring. So, I should think Raffaele Marciello is starting to maybe think about the championship. There is Max Paul. I have the honour of saying I raced against 2 of the 3 drivers on the podium in a go-karting race on Thursday. And I have also the honour of saying that they left me in their dust within about 2 corners.
Yes, you and me both, on both counts there. This is, I make it, the 5th win of the season for Mercedes. That makes it the 29th win for Mercedes in GT Masters. The big 3-0 is on the horizon for the manufacturer.
Wow. Audi, look over your shoulder.
Yeah.
So there we are in Parc Fermé. Raffaele Marciello never looks overly delighted, especially if it's anything other than the top step of the podium. But even he knows that that solid points haul is exactly what he needs when all of his championship contenders have fallen by the wayside. And the Yellow Mamba now very much in the box seats to become the champion of 2022 in the ADAC GT Masters, becoming the German GT champion. And Lello being the driver who will, of course, take that championship if things continue as they are at the next round. There is Maximilian Paul and Marco Mapelli. Mapelli, as we've already mentioned, who loves the Sachsenring. and Max Paul, who lives not too far away from the Sachsenring.
And how appropriate for Jan Marszałkowski that the circuit where he took his first win in ADAC GT4, his first race victory in a car point blank, is now where he also took his first ADAC GT Masters win.
Well,
that's what I wanted to tell you.
He's going to have a picture of the Sachsenring on his lounge wall, I should think.
Tattooed on his back, I reckon.
Keep yourself, mate. I'm just listening in.
I told you.
I was not pushing. I was not.
We have to apply throttle and
Very
otherwise.
difficult. Yes.
I know.
Really interesting to hear Marco Mapelli very much tutoring Max Paul there, just saying. And of course, Marco Mapelli, massively.
You see the first laps I was.
All right. A massively experienced driver. Max Paul is the driver who is still learning the ropes a few years into his GT3 career, and the tuition carries on. There is your classification. Marvin Dees, Jan Marszałkowski, a historic win at the Sachsenring ahead of Raffaele Marciello, Daniel Juncadella, Max Paul, Marco Mapelli in third, had a Salman Vega, Christopher Harter, Florian Spengler, Marcus Vinkhorst, Arthur Rougier, Frank Pereira, Ben Green, Jesse Krohn in seventh, Albert Costa Balboa, Jack Aitken, actually 8th place. I think at the beginning of the race they would have taken that for Emil Frey Racing, so they came back. It's not the points haul they wanted coming into this weekend, but it has kept them just within a very slim reach of the championship lead. Joel Sturm, Sven Muller in 9th, ahead of Elias Sepinen and Frank Bird. Tim Zimmerman, Christopher Mies coming home in 11th after that puncture. Then Thierry Vermeulen and Matthias Drudy. Simon Riker and Norbert Seeler, the last of the runners. Everybody who finished gets points. Kim Louis Schramm is being shown in 14th, ahead of Yusufa Vega. Of course, they were non-finishers, as was Jules Gounon, Luca Engster, Einchen Guven, and Konsta Lapalainen. Woo! What a race. There is a replay of that tyre letting go. The most depressing feeling for any race driver, especially when you are at the sharp end of the grid.
Yeah, huge shame for Kim Louis Schramm. He was in the lead. The tyre was clearly on its way out. The days of it providing anything like adhesion were clearly over when he got overtaken by Marvin Dietz, as if he simply wasn't there. We're all hoping for his sake and the sake of Retronic Racing that they'd get to the finish, but it just wasn't to be.
Some nice slow-mos here of that third place car. The Paul Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo with Max Paul and Marco Mapelli at the wheel, coming home ultimately in third place, avoiding the wreckage and the carnage and the punctures. And second place was Raffaele Marciello and Daniel Juncadella in the Mercedes-AMG GT3 for Manfilter Team Landgraf, the Yellow Mamba, once again on the podium. One of many, many podiums this season. But the top step, the first ever win for Jan Marszałkowski. We believe maybe the second ever win for Marvin Dietz. Historic win for Mercedes-AMG Team ZVO. The 8 pink BWT Mercedes. The winner here in race 12 at the Sachsenring. So these drivers so emotionally invested in the racing here, and you can just see the outpouring of emotion, particularly taking a first win or a first win after a very long time. And it was very much about survival as well as going fast, wasn't it? It was saving the tyres. You could say it was unlucky for somebody to get a puncture, but actually preserving the tyres, getting the car to the end is an art in itself, isn't it?
It's part of the game, absolutely. You know, some of the people I spoke to in the GT4 paddock, you know, they're saying, I got into the car for the first time here in free practice and I lunched the tyres in, 20 to 30 minutes. And then over the course of the weekend, they figured out more and more how to drive smoothly without completely hindering their pace and therefore making more out of the tyres, particularly on the right-hand side, particularly on the right rear. And it was the right rear tyre that you saw deflating time and time again over the course of that race distance. And I'm telling you now that everyone who's got to the end, particularly those who started and then had to watch it happen for the second half of the race, are all extremely relieved. And in the case of Jan Marszałkowski, now very much elated.
And we still have 2 more races left this season. Of course, the Sachsenring, where we head to next, a very different kind of circuit, a lot flatter. The historic ex-Formula 1 circuit for round 7, races 13 and 14 on the 21st to the 23rd of October. Our new champion will be crowned, and it will be a new champion in the ADAC GT Masters as we look at the 3rd place drivers coming out onto the trophy. Maximilian Paul and Marco Mappelli will stand on the 3rd step of the podium. Second will come Raffaele Marciello and Daniel Juncadella for Man Filter Team Landgraf. And good to see Marciello smiling. No, you're not going on the top step, mate. Get back down there where you belong. There you go. And now... Oh, I'm going to get punched. And now... Here we go. This is going to be emotional. The winners of race 12 of the season onto the top step of the podium. Marvin Dies, Jan Marszałkowski, you are a winner in ADAC GT Masters. Brilliant stuff. Congratulations from the other finishers, and then to the top step of the podium. Here comes a representative from Drago Racing Team ZVO. And in just a few moments, we will all stand for the national anthem. Just wait for him to take his place on the podium. There we go, national anthem time. So I think it's going to take a little while for it to sink in for Jan Marszałkowski. I think Raffaele Marciello is now surely going to be thinking about the championship within reach. Dr. Gert Esner presenting the trophy to the race winners, and what a great trophy to have on the mantelpiece. I'd need a bigger mantelpiece for that one. The second place, Marvin Dies. Welcome back to GT Masters, Marvin Dies. Let's have you back next year, please, because we really enjoy having you here as part of this series. Second place, and there is Daniel Juncadella, of course, who was the co-pilot along with Jan Marszałkowski, looking at the pink drivers alongside him and thinking, I should have been in that podium position. And then here comes the 3rd place trophy being presented to Max Paul and Marco Mappelli. Great trophies. And then there'll be one for the winning team, Drago Racing Team ZVO, and that will come out in just a few moments. And then the celebrations will continue into the night and possibly into about the 20th of October before we head to the Sachsenring on the 21st.
I tell you what, Jan Marszałkowski should run after Matthias Ekstrom, who presented the 2nd place trophy, and say, do you know a good trophy cabinet guy, Matthias? I feel like you're the man to ask. Because I think that could be the first of many for the talented young German racer. Same goes for Marvin Dies. He's been massive in Prototype Cup Germany this year, and I'm so happy to see him in a top seat in GT Masters this year.
So posing for photographs before the emotion will finally be unleashed. The bottles of champagne are picked up and the celebrations start. It has been an astonishing race 12 of the season. Race 11 was pretty spectacular yesterday. Today we had everything. We had controversy, we had crashes, we had punctures, we had mechanical failures, we had first-time winners. We have everything.